Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We have completed our course, I would say successfully, and today is the final class where I am going to talk about different tutorials or exercises which we could do if you would have attended classes or if we would have on-campus classes. So these were some of the practical exercises relevant to our course material which we have discussed. So I am just going to give you a overview of these tutorials. Some of them we have actually done already, and the first exercise was related to the history of technology, which we had discussed in I think the second class. So in this exercise you were divided into different groups, and I ask you to introduce with each other, and then you are required to think about an innovation from the history, and different periods were given to different groups, and you had to think about an innovation, and it should not be steam engine or electricity or none of these things which are now being shown on the screen. You had to think about something else. And later on, what you had to do, you had to answer to these questions: that what exactly this innovation was, who invented this, why it was made, when it was made, and the most important thing was that how this innovation impacted on the legal system. So these were some of the questions which were required to be answered by you. This was the first exercise. We actually did this in our class. In tutorial 2, you were required to discuss about super intelligence. We already know what is the difference between artificial narrow intelligence, artificial general intelligence, artificial super intelligence. And we made a premise that the machine super intelligence will be the last invention humans will need to make. So the question was, actually you are required to explore that what is juristic act and what is the criteria for agency, because we have seen that robots can act as an agency, and in future it is possible, especially with the advancement of internet of things, it is possible that the agencies will have further agencies. So there are so many questions related to the contract, liability, tort, and so on. So for this purpose you were required to do a debate. And for debate, we had three formats: Lincoln and Douglas style, one-on-one debate; British parliamentary style, in which there are 4 teams; and American parliamentary style, in which there are 2 teams. So it depends on the number of students in the class, and then you can discuss, different questions. First of all, a general discussion: what is agency problem, and will superintelligence resolve agency problem in the sales of goods? And then you can debate. Debate can be the topic can be derived from these questions. Uh, Nemo.quad, known habit. It is the um, common, phrase in contract law. You cannot sell something which you don't owe. And the question related to e-commerce and digital agency can be discussed for debate. For example, can you sell something which you don't owe? One group can be in favor, one group can be in the opposition. And in domestic sale of goods are usually passed, which virtually does not exist, or buyer already have the possession. So you can argue on this. For example, when someone buys likes on Instagram, or Instagram users virtually, they does not exist. Yes, and someone cannot sell on the behalf of someone, theoretically speaking, but it is happening, and people are paying money for this. And then there was a question: that is e-commerce eliminating the concept of agency when the role of intermediaries are becoming uh, less and less. So what is the role of agency? So we could debate on these topics. The third tutorial was related to the new innovation technologies. We discussed about actus rea and mens rea in criminal law. So the thought process of robots, and then we discussed about you know different kind of reservations with regard to the thought process of robots. So if the conscious AI brain or replica of human brain falls in the category of goods, if no, which contract best describe this scenario? And the similar question was asked in the first class, that is buying and selling of conscious robot is considered as slavery or not? So similarly, this question could be discussed, that the conscious AI brain or replica of human brain falls in the category of goods or not. You can do buying or selling or not. If yes, can conscious AI products be considered as future goods and an agreement to sell be concluded? Yes. So there could be a discussion on this. And this phenomenon of cryonics means when the people are about to die, they give their bodies to these companies who help them preserve their body with the promise that in future they will be reincarnated, or they will be bring into the life when the medicine will be able to find the cure of the diseases with which they are suffering now. So can definition of goods be derived from their purpose? This is a philosophical question which needed to be answered. And the tutorial 4 is related to e-commerce. We have different types of e-commerces, then we have different types of businesses related to e-commerce. There are physical goods, services, and digital goods. We are doing buying and selling of these things through internet. And if you look at this slide, you can see that there are multiple options available, because e-commerce is very diverse in terms of their participants, diversity in terms of the goods which are being sold, and the business models. If you can simply multiply business to consumer with physical goods, and drop shipping or business and consumer digital goods through warehousing, there are multiple options available, and you can make multiple models, and these multiple models require multiple legal interventions. So what was the task? The task was to select one type of e-business model from this picture, which I have already shown you, and select a type of good and business model, find an emerging issue related to the delivery and payment, and discuss the limitation of Sale of Goods Act, and deliver a short presentation. Yes. So you had to find a type of e-commerce business in terms of the participants, and then you had to find a good, and then you have to find a model, and then you had to find a problem, and then you had to look at the existing laws in your countries, and you had to deliver a presentation that what could be improved. Okay. So yes. And with regard to the buying and selling of digital goods, these questions could be discussed. For example, how data can be monetized. I mean, how you can make money out of data, and buying or selling of data through cloud computing. Yes, where the data is being stored and how it is being ethically used by the state agencies, or if it is safe or not, or how you can do buying and selling of this data which is being saved on clouds. And then, are IP rights of digital content are more important than consumer rights? Discuss the boundaries and threshold, and what is the digital content ecosystem? What is the future of digital data consumption? These were the questions which needed to be explored. And the fifth tutorial is related to your group exercise. You had to look at your mobile applications, for example, the payment systems, or the taxi, or some of the chat applications, messengers. You had to look at them and find a service contract in one of your mobile application, and highlight the important or main elements of the contract, and then you had to share this with your fellows. So some of the examples we had discussed in our class, for example, the taxi. If the taxi save the data of the individuals, the personal data is sensitive very sensitive in terms of the movement of the individuals. And I told you that I have some reservations related to this, that my data is being stored by a taxi application, and I am not sure that if it is safe or not, or they are using it for ethical purposes or not. So similarly, you had to look at your mobile application, you had to find a service contract, you had to find the loopholes in this service contract. Yes. And then there was a possibility to analyze these cases from the British law. And final tutorial 6 was the IP audit. I could tell you that how to do the IP audit. Like we have financial audits, we could also conduct the intellectual property audits. And for doing intellectual property audit, you had to identify the IP assets of a company. The company owes financial assets. Similarly, company owes intellectual property assets. You had to identify the intellectual property assets of a company. And then the answer to the question that these rights have been acquired and how they are maintained, and are they exploited optimally, and is there any redundant IP? Is there any infringement of the third party rights? So these are some of the questions which could be discussed in terms of conducting intellectual property audit. So discuss the evaluation of any one consumer right. You could find one consumer right with regard to the uses of new innovation technologies, maybe data, and then you can focus on the historic period, personality, themes, and cultures, and social dilemmas and questions emerging to them. So this is how you can choose a topic for your dissertation as well. For example, if you are not sure that on which topic you should do your research, you can select a thematic area, for example, data, and then you can discuss the historic period with regard to the legal progression related to data. You can talk about individual scientists or personalities who have written on data. You can talk about different themes related to data, for example, data protection, data storage, cloud computing, buying and selling of data, data as commodities. Yes, these are the thematic areas. And then there are so many layers of cultural, social, religious, political, economical dimensions related to new innovation technologies, including data. You could write something related to them. So these were some of the tutorials which we could do, but I have given you an overview, and I am very hopeful that you will look into some of these questions, and you will try to answer them for your own sake. And thank you very much for your attention.